Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I'm delighted to be talking with author Jenny Kiefer. Jenny, thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
A pleasure, a pleasure. I'll mention the titles The Wretched Valley and Crafting for Sinners, both of
Mhm.
which are books that you've shared with the world, and you've also been featured in a variety of anthologies. So glad to be
Mhm.
talking about your influences and process. So initially, as kind of an origins question, what attracted you to the written word? How did you get into this world of authoring?
I've always been a very avid reader. Um, so I think that was like a natural progression. I can remember like when I was in middle school or maybe a little earlier. I think I had like a really basic computer in my room. Maybe that was a little later, but at some point I had like a computer in my room where I would have notebooks, and I can remember like starting a bunch of chapter books, and I never like finished them, and I never really got very serious about that, but I would always like start them constantly. um, and I think my first creative writing award was in second grade for a classroom wide short story contest. I remember I wrote it was like a Christmas theme, and I wrote a story about a kid who climbed into Santa's like toy sack and like flew around with him for the night, and then woke up the next morning in his own bed. So, which I still think could make a pretty good children's book, but maybe somebody else can write that because I don't think I'm a very good children's writer. So I've always been reading, and I've always just been trying to write stories. So I think it was a natural progression. And actually, when I was like coming out of high school, I actually wanted to be a cinematographer for
Oh,
film.
nice. Hmm.
But there weren't any film schools in Kentucky, and all of the film schools outside of Kentucky were very expensive. So initially, I ended up at Western Kentucky University for photography, but their photography program was like really crazy because it was actually a photojournalism program, and like I think one of the top actually one of the good photojournalism programs in the country. So it was just like very hard, and I think when I took like the intro to photography, I was like one of the last. That was in like 2007, 2008, and I think I was one of the last classes to like have actual film cameras.
Oh,
And
yes. Uh-huh.
so like when you would get an assignment, it was just like it honestly was like expensive because the professor was like, you have to film in black and white, and so black and white film was more expensive. And then you had to like
Hmm.
get the rolls developed. And so it's like I might have stuck with that um if I had like if it was a digital camera, because I mean you're limited I guess by like your SD card, but like ultimately you can like look at the picture right after you take it, and you can like delete stuff if you need to. Whereas with a film camera, you're like, I don't really know what this is gonna look like until it's developed. But anyway, I dropped out of that program, and Western Kentucky had a creative writing program for undergrads, and I think at the time it was like the only school in Kentucky to have a creative writing program for undergrads. So
Oh, wow.
I switched to that track and stuck with it. So it's a
Nice,
long-winded
nice.
way. I've always been writing.
I love it. Love the creative arts and love the exploring. And I was going to ask you, as a kind of a tucked in question here about Appalachian influence,
Hmm.
because both of your novels are set in Kentucky. So it sounds like
Hmm.
that's also been part of your creativity and
Yeah.
personal history.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm born and raised in Kentucky, and I have traveled all around the state for various reasons. So I think the main one was the summer right after high school. I worked for the Kentucky State Fair as a fair bear, which is like their mascot, and we drove. It was like me, two other teenagers, and then like a more adult supervisor. we like packed up, like there were two bear costumes, and so we packed all of that up into a van and drove around Kentucky going to county fairs to promote the state fair. Um, and I did not like that job, but it was kind of, I mean, like I didn't like the bear part, like I didn't like having to wear the mascot part, but you know, like driving around the state was fun, and the people that I did it with were fun. And it was like kind of an adventure. It was like a nice summer job between high school and college. Um, in that way. I don't think like I would do it now. You know, but so I've driven around Kentucky a lot, and I also I've gone rock climbing in Red River Gorge a number of times and gone camping in the state and stuff. So I just feel like
Cool.
there's not a ton of Kentucky representation in fiction.
I agree, and especially crafting in horror.
Hmm.
I feel like that's such an interesting genre, and there's such a link to that with Appalachia and the
Hmm.
mysteries of the area. What attracted you to horror? What does horror allow you to do?
Um, I think I'm attracted to, I mean, I think it came from my mom. She was always really into like Halloween, and she runs the bookstore with me now. Um, but so I think like it's always been a genre that I've just been attracted to. Even when I was like going through my, I'll say, pretentious phase where I would only read like classics or high art,
Oh yes.
I still really preferred like darker literature. Like I loved William Faulkner, who's like Southern Gothic. My favorite book to this day is Catch 22, which is like it's like a humor, but it like turns horrific and it's anti-war. I read a lot of anti-war books. Um, so I think, and I never really liked the like pithy, like I didn't really get into British literature very much, or just
Mhm.
like the like I didn't like stuff like Catcher in the Rye. So it was still like I was still leaning towards like that darker side of literature. So, but as for writing it, I think it really helps me explore my own anxieties or like even sometimes parts of my identity, and it's sort of like controlling those fears and anxieties in a space where like I have ultimate control, like I get to choose what happens and what the outcome is. Um, and it's yeah, so it's more so like a way for me to explore my anxieties, and I think like more so than other genres would allow you to do.
Nice, nice. Yeah. How has your creative process sort of changed, or what have you discovered about yourself creatively from the time you started to now?
um let's see. I mean, I think I have been writing long enough that like I know my strengths and weaknesses. So I think my strengths are really tension, body horror and gore are definitely my strengths. I think actually one thing I feel like I have to work really hard at is emotion and character. Um,
Mhm.
but really, I think a lot of authors go through this, and it's like every time I go to start a new project, it feels like I've never done this before. I'm just like, you know, it's like I've professionally done this twice, but like I'm trying to work on my next book to get it ready to go on submission, and I'm like, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing every single time. So it's like each book, each project is like its own monster to defeat, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what have been some of the best experiences that you've had so far? And just thinking about, you're a person who immerses themselves in literacy, obviously from working in a bookstore to
Hmm.
sharing your own work. So, just curious about some of the best experiences and connections you've made so far in the community.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really cool to like that people are actually reading the books. I always
Hmm.
joke to like friends and family that, you know, you don't have to read it, you just have to buy it. Um, but it is cool that people are actually reading it. Um, It's been a kind of an it's been really interesting. I mean, the Wretched Valley was nominated for a couple of big awards. It was nominated for a Splatterpunk, which I don't honestly really don't understand, but why it was nominated. I guess it has a lot of gore. Um, I'm very, proud of that nomination, but I was kind of scratching my head a little bit because I would consider crafting for Sinners more Splatterpunk.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but and that one didn't get nominated, so it's like whatever. But Wretched Valley was also nominated for a Bram Stoker Award. Um, so the nominations are cool. I think I've gotten to do some really cool events for crafting. I did an event at Powell's in Portland at the big location. So like my name was on the marquee, and that was really cool to see.
Hmm.
Um, I got to go to the Louisiana Book Festival this year. So that was fun. I think like meeting a lot of other authors that you like look up to or that like to me feel like really big names and then like they know who I am is kind of cool and weird in a way. I think one of the best things that's happened with crafting is seeing all of the, I guess, positive reactions from people who have diabetes and like really resonating with Ruth, who is a type 1 diabetic.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's been really nice. And that I was at an event in Indianapolis and was talking about that and how I'm not diabetic, but I have friends and family who are. And I had a dog who was diabetic and he passed last July. But he was diabetic for like the last 3 years of his life. And the way it like sort of biologically functions, dog diabetes is very similar to type 1. It's obviously
Hmm.
not the same. It's a little easier to manage because he just had like a prescription kibble, that we gave him. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's not like to my knowledge, there's not a prescription human diabetic kibble. Um, but I knew so that was like the inspiration, but I knew that if I made that choice, I really wanted to get it right. And so I did a lot of research. I reached out to friends and family as I was writing it to say like, do you think like this is what would happen? And I also really tried to just make it part of her character and not like just shoehorned in for plot reasons. Um,
Hmm.
and it's been really nice to see the positive reactions. Not only to know that like I did get it right, but also just to see readers. I've seen a number of readers who have tagged me in things saying like it's really nice representation and that, I even had one reader in a review say something like, she's type 1 diabetic and when she reads horror she always thinks like what would happen to me with my blood sugar, and she said like, well, in this book I didn't have to do that because it was on the page.
Hmm.
But in Indianapolis, when I was talking about this, there was a girl who came up to me after the talk and to get her book signed, and she said her dog had diabetes too, and that like it was new and she was trying to manage it. And I actually mailed her when we were dealing with it. My spouse 3D printed like a syringe organizer because she was
Hmm.
saying that they had trouble keeping track of like whether they'd already given their dog his insulin. And so I mailed her our syringe organizer, and she sent me a really nice
Oh,
note that it's been really helpful and keeping them at ease. So I think that's probably like one of the coolest things is just that specific connection to readers.
yeah, that's very cool. Very cool and great representation as well. And you mentioned you're already at work on the next
Mm-hmm.
book, so
Yep.
curious about anything you want to say about what's next and where people can find out more.
Well, the third book is not on contract. It's not been sold to anyone. Like I said, I'm getting trying to get it ready to go on submission hopefully soon, but it's proving to be like a little bit of a beast. Um, I'm having a little I'm working I did I think like last week. I feel like just with there's been a lot that's been going on in my just personal life. which I think has made it difficult to like find the, mental headspace to really devote myself to work on it. But I think I had like somebody sent me a specific book recommendation because I was just like, I think for me, it's like occasionally I'll just hit walls and I have to, with projects, and I have to step back and be like, what is the wall I'm hitting? So, one thing that happened in crafting as I was writing it was um, that there was like, and the experience of writing crafting, I feel like it was so fast and it was also during a very tumultuous time in my life that sometimes I'm like, I don't remember writing it. It was like, how like when you go through like a really stressful period in your life, you just like the memory or like of that is just gone. But I think there was one part where she was like, I was trying to make the store kind of like this liminal space. And I was thinking, like, well, what if the store had like all these weird angles and she's getting like disoriented as she's walking around? And I was trying to write that. And I was like, felt so stuck. And I had to step back and be like, why do I feel stuck? And I was like, I think it's because I'm bored. And if I'm bored writing it, then I think the reader is going to be bored reading it. So I like scrapped that idea. But for this one, I think I realized like I know more about, there's kind of like a twofold villain. There's like kind of two-ish villains in this story. And I was like, I think I know more about, there's like a human villain and then like a sort of like Wretched Valley, there's like a wider, like more supernatural type villain. And I was like, I think one problem is that one reason I'm stuck is that I know more about my human villain than my main character. And so
Mhm.
I had to take a step back from the manuscript or from like the plot or outline or whatever and be like, I just need to spend time like building this character. And so I asked some writing friends for a suggestion. And someone, I'm gonna have to look it up again because I read it's really short and really cheap, but I just can't remember the title. But they recommended a craft book called "Write Characters Your Readers Won't Forget" by Stant Latour. Um,
Mhm.
and it's like it's on, I think it's only on Amazon, but the Kindle version is like $7, $6 or $7. So it's really cheap. It's not too long. But yeah, that was really helpful. I like just sat down and went through that whole thing in one day and I like made a bunch of notes. And so now I'm going through a second book from K.M. Wyland, I think. It's like her creating characters workbook. So I'm going through that now. And so hopefully then once I like feel like I know more about my characters, I can like go back to the actual draft or like manuscript sort of phase. And it'll be a little easier.
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful, wonderful insights. And we're always improving, right? We're
Yeah.
always learning and growing.
I feel like I'm never, at least right now it feels like I will never like just be able to sit down and be like, yes, I know how to write a book.
And as you mentioned, the process changes each
Yeah, well,
time.
each
So,
each story is going to be different, and each story is going to need like this. The one I'm working on has more characters like that need like actual backstories and like fleshing out than any book I've done so far. So I think that's also one challenge. Um, so yeah, each book is gonna, and that's how you grow, I think, as in any sort of craft, whether it's like guitar or knitting or writing, just if you just do like the same things over and over again and don't really push yourself and don't like try to look out for these resources and learn, you won't improve.
true enough, true enough. If I'm a listener and I want to find out more, where are some places I might go to do that?
For my personal website, you can go to jennykiefer.com. I think on most socials, I really only post to Instagram now. It's underscore Jenny Kiefer. And then for the bookstore, I own a horror bookstore in Louisville, Kentucky with my mom called Butcher Cabin Books. And you can go to horrorbookstore.com or at horror bookstore. Again, we mostly just post to Instagram, and I think it like auto posts to Facebook. Um,
Mm-hmm.
But those are the main places. And I mean, I personally don't post very much on Instagram or anywhere.